An improved version of the Learning Agreement is being introduced for surgical trainees with the new surgical curriculum from August 2021. This guide describes how it will change, how it should be completed, and how it will work with the new Multiple Consultant Report, or MCR. The account detail and data included here are for illustrative purposes only. What you're seeing on the screen here is the point in the process where the trainee has created a new placement, making the new learning agreement available. This page lists all learning agreements and shows their status. New style learning agreements are displayed in shades of purple, while older ones are in grey. As each learning agreement meeting becomes available and is completed, its tab colour goes darker. Unfinished older versions can still be accessed and completed along with the new. It's only trainees who can create learning agreements. To start, click Create Learning Agreement to move to the next stage. The Learning Agreement and MCR are designed to work in conjunction with each other. This progress summary has been built into the Learning Agreement as a guide to the critical assessment points within a placement. As each stage of the Learning Agreement, or MCR, is completed, the next stage becomes available, and this part of the video is an overview of how these stages fit together. Training Programme Directors, assigned educational supervisors and clinical supervisors will be alerted as relevant at each stage. The first task is to select a lead clinical supervisor, or lead CS. When that's completed, the objective setting meeting can be filled in. When the objective setting meeting has been signed off by both trainee and AES, the midpoint MCR and trainee self-assessment become available. The MCR and trainee self-assessment at the midpoint are optional in the system, but very strongly recommended for training purposes. Because they're optional, the midpoint learning agreement can take place regardless of non-completion of the midpoint MCR and trainee self-assessment, or either. But both should be completed. When the midpoint learning agreement has been signed off by both trainee and AES, the final MCR and trainee self-assessment become available. These are mandatory so that the final learning agreement cannot take place without their completion. AES and trainee sign-off of the final learning agreement meeting, which has been combined with the AES's end of placement report, is the end of the process, when the learning agreement is completed for that placement. When you select the icon for the lead CS, the next screen will show the names of trainers the trainee named as CSs in this placement. So it's important that trainee placements name all CSs so they're all included in the MCR. There should be at least 2 CSs for the MCR to be viable, and there's no maximum number. When AESs act as CSs, it wouldn't be ideal for them to be selected as the lead CS, because the 2 roles have separate oversight of the MCR. Select one of these names as the lead CS. The person selected should have agreed in advance that they will take on the role, so that it won't be a surprise when they receive an alert on their ISCP dashboard along with guidance about the steps and responsibilities for doing it. Click the green button to save your choice. The objective setting meeting is now ready. The lead clinical supervisor can be changed at any time throughout the placement by either the trainee or AES. And the people concerned will be informed. And a history of people who've been selected as lead CS will be displayed. Back to the progress summary. Now that the objective setting meeting is ready, it will show as work in progress on the trainee's dashboard, and the AES will see an alert on their ISCP dashboard so that they can access it too. To start the objective setting meeting, click on the objective setting icon. This first page is a cover page. Select the date on which the meeting was held, not the date when the form was completed. The Training Programme Director's global objective will be visible. Click More to see the entire text. A new feature lower down is a display of the key details from the trainee's most recent ARCP, providing an opportunity to take account of any wider impact on the trainee's progression. Save and continue. On the next page, this breadcrumb trail and this progress bar are additional navigational aids allowing you to keep track and maintain awareness of your location in the learning agreement. You will need to complete each page in order, but after that, using the breadcrumb trail, the progress bar, or buttons at the bottom of the page, you can go back and forward to any page. And you can see the initial progress summary at any time. This first page is dedicated to the trainee's generic professional capabilities, or GPCs. Because GPCs are essential capabilities that underpin professional medical practice, they must carry equal weight to the SIPs. You can view what the latest MCR and trainee self-assessment said about the trainee's GPCs before considering objectives using this selection of views. You can view by just the GPCs rated as areas for development, just those rated as appropriate for phase, all GPCs, or one GPC category at a time. I'll choose GPCs by areas for development. What's now displayed on the left is the latest MCR, and on the right the trainee's self-assessment, allowing comparison. However, please be aware when using the learning agreement for the first time from August, because the first MCR will only be started at the midpoint of the placement, it won't be visible in the first objective setting meeting. But as long as the midpoint MCR takes place, it will be visible from the midpoint learning agreement onwards and thereafter. So it's important that the midpoint MCR takes place in time for the midpoint learning agreement meeting. Each of these short texts is a descriptor selected in the MCR or in the trainee self-assessment, and there may be comments underneath. These areas can be compared and discussed in the meeting, making it easier to focus objectives around the trainee's progression through the GPCs. Further down are two mandatory text boxes that need to be filled in. And these tabs show that as the learning agreement progresses throughout the placement, each meeting will be available in a separate tab, one for objective setting, one for the midpoint review, and one for the final review. The first text box asks what GPC objectives the trainee should be aiming to achieve over the next 3 to 6 months to aid their development. The second text box is also important. It requires consideration about what support and help the trainee will need to achieve those objectives, and the trainee might have a view on what might be needed here. You might want to draw on some of the descriptors and comments from the MCR and trainee self-assessment above. You can copy text from here straight into the objectives box by clicking on the crosses next to those texts. This populates the text box, and you can modify the wording if necessary. Save and continue to move on or to come back to later. Now that the GPCs are done, we can move on to the SIPs, as shown in the progress bar. Unlike the GPCs, which are dealt with as a whole, each SIP has its own objectives page. The 5 shared SIPs are shown here, but cardiothoracic surgery, paediatric surgery and plastic surgery will show additional specialty-specific SIPs. We're on SIP 1, Manages an Outpatient Clinic. There's no need to filter the view, the whole MCR and trainee self-assessment are automatically displayed. You can see the supervision level set, comparing it with the trainee's view, areas for development, areas of excellence and comments. Again, there are crosses next to the texts to populate the mandatory objectives box. When thinking about objectives and how to achieve them, it's worth discussing with the trainee their preferred learning styles and the kind of action that will help. Would it be better for them to work on their own with guidance and a plan, or with others in a study group or in role play? Would it be useful to guide them with diagrams, videos, activities, or book learning? There should be action for change to occur. There should also be the necessary reflection, or learning may not stick. Even with this, trainees may need help understanding the bigger picture, so discussion with a trainer may be needed. And the trainee's view is very important, of course. And all objectives should be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. Keep going like this through each SIP page, saving as you go. When the GPC and SIPs pages have all been worked through, all the content is displayed in a summary page. This provides an overview of the whole meeting, and you can modify the content here and it will change the previous pages accordingly. When finished, click Save and Continue. The final page of objective setting is the sign-off page. There's a space for trainee and AES to make their final comments. Then they can sign off separately or together by the AES adding their password. Then click Sign Off. That's the end of the objective setting meeting. The midpoint and final meetings are exactly the same with some additional questions, and the AES report is combined with the final review meeting. In summary, this video has shown how the learning agreement will change, how it should be completed, and how it will work with the new MCR. The learning agreement and MCR work in conjunction with each other. Each stage becomes available as the previous stage is completed. The lead CS for the MCR is selected at the beginning of the learning agreement. The latest MCR and trainee self-assessment are visible within the learning agreement, and descriptors from them can be easily added as learning objectives. The learning agreement has been streamlined so that the AES report and final review meeting are combined. Overall, the new learning agreement should make it easier to focus objectives on the achievement of GPCs and SIPs, directing progress towards readiness for day one consultant practice.